They say the devil is in the details, but that's a lie people tell themselves because they're too lazy to read the fine print. The devil isn't in the details. The devil is in the definition section, usually around page 4, paragraph 3, subsection B. That's where I lived for 23 years. While the sales guys were out buying steak dinners on the company card, and the marketing team was busy sniffing their own farts in brainstorming sessions about synergy, I was in the back room building the engine. I'm Roy Sullivan. I'm 51 years old, and I'm a corporate technology architect. It sounds boring, I know. It sounds like the kind of job where you wear pocket protectors and die quietly at your desk. But in the world of industrial data systems, I'm the person who makes sure the billion-dollar pipes don't burst. I drafted the code, not the computer code, but the legal code, the DNA of the company. 23 years ago, this company, Stream Tech Industries, wasn't a tech giant in a glass tower in Cleveland. It was 3 guys and me crammed into a rented office above a tire shop that smelled permanently of burnt rubber and desperation. I remember sitting on a folding chair, balancing a laptop on my knees, drafting the original exclusivity agreements while the founder, Old Man Patterson, paced around smoking cheap cigars. He was a bastard, but he was a smart bastard. Former auto worker who clawed his way up from the assembly line to owning his own tech company. He understood that brilliance without protection was just expensive charity work. "Roy," he'd say, pointing a calloused finger stained with nicotine, "make it bulletproof. I want a contract so tight that if they try to breathe without paying us, they owe us for the oxygen." Patterson hired me straight out of community college. I was 28, had a 2-year degree in computer science, and was working nights at a manufacturing plant while trying to figure out my next move. My dad was a mechanic. My mom worked at the grocery store. Nobody in my family had ever worn a tie to work. But Patterson saw something in me. Maybe it was the way I could spot problems 3 moves ahead. Or maybe he just needed someone willing to work 70-hour weeks for peanuts. So I did what he asked. I built a fortress of paper. I wove clauses together like a spider web made of razor wire. I created the licensing infrastructure that eventually turned that tire shop startup into a $900 million empire. For 23 years, I stayed in the shadows. I didn't want the fame. I didn't need the magazine covers. I just wanted the machine to work, and I wanted Patterson to know that the kid from the wrong side of town could outthink any Ivy League lawyer they threw at us. Patterson became more than a boss to me. He was the father figure I'd never had. He taught me that respect isn't given based on where you went to school or who your daddy was. It's earned through results. When suppliers tried to lowball us, Patterson would drag me into meetings and say, "Roy here is going to explain why you're wrong." And I would, systematically dismantling their arguments until they either paid fair price or found the door. The company grew, and I grew with it. I wrote the employee handbook, designed the organizational structure, and personally vetted every major contract that crossed Patterson's desk. By 2008, 7 years into my tenure, we were big enough to attract serious attention from international partners. That's when I drafted the master licensing agreement that would define our global operations. Patterson was getting paranoid in those days. He'd seen too many companies get sold out from under their founders. "Roy," he told me one night as we worked late on the MLA, "I want safeguards. Real safeguards. If somebody ever tries to push us around, I want weapons in place." That's when I wrote Clause 14B, the wet ink requirement. Any amendment affecting our core IP rights had to be signed physically, in person, by both Patterson and whoever held the title of Chief Technology Architect, which was me. It seemed like overkill at the time, but Patterson insisted. "You never know when you'll need an insurance policy," he said. I also negotiated something special for myself in my employment contract that year. Patterson was drunk on success and feeling generous. He agreed to a clause that would grant me 1.8% royalties on all international licensing revenue if I was ever terminated without cause. It was supposed to be impossible. Patterson would never fire me, and nobody else could, or so we thought. Quick side note before I get into how the machine tried to eat me. I'm dumping this whole saga here because my lawyer said I can't talk to the press yet, but he didn't say anything about anonymous forums. If you want to see how a middle-aged guy takes down a boardroom full of trust fund babies, hit subscribe because the story I'm about to tell is going to make your day. The problem with building a perfect machine is that eventually people forget it needs a mechanic. They just assume it runs on magic. Patterson fought cancer for 3 years before it finally took him last spring. I was with him the day before he died, and his last words to me were, "Don't let them destroy what we built, Roy. Don't let them forget where this came from." I promised him I wouldn't. I had no idea how soon I'd have to keep that promise. Patterson's funeral was on a Tuesday. The whole company shut down for the day, which would have made the old man laugh. "Costing me money even when I'm dead," he would have said. I gave one of the eulogies, talking about how he built something from nothing, how he never forgot where he came from. I meant every word. What I didn't mention was the conversation I'd had with him 2 weeks before he died. He was worried about his son. Jordan Walsh was 32 years old, fresh out of Harvard Business School with an MBA his father had paid for but never been proud of. While his dad was building stream tech from a tire shop, Jordan was learning about disruptive innovation and agile methodologies from professors who'd never run so much as a lemonade stand. "Roy," Patterson had told me from his hospital bed, his voice barely a whisper, "Jordan's got the education, but he doesn't have the hunger. He doesn't understand what we built here or why we built it the way we did. Promise me you'll look after him. Keep him from making stupid mistakes." I promised, but I had a sinking feeling that Jordan wasn't going to want my help. The kingdom passed to the prince exactly as expected. Jordan walked into the CEO's office on his first day wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, carrying a latte and a sense of entitlement so dense it had its own gravitational pull. He'd grown up rich, gone to private schools, spent summers in Europe while I was working double shifts to pay for night classes. I knew we were in trouble the moment he called his first all-hands meeting. I'd been to dozens of these over the years with his father. Patterson would talk about stability, about taking care of the people who'd built the company, about the contracts that kept our lights on. Jordan talked about disruption. He used the word pivot 6 times in 3 minutes and synergy 4 times. He looked at the company his father bled to build and saw it as a platform for his own ambitions. He looked at me, the guy in the corner with the sensible glasses and the 3-ring binders full of contracts, and he didn't see the architect. He saw furniture. He saw a legacy cost. He saw a relic from his father's era that needed to be updated or discarded. The first few months, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he just needed time to understand how things worked. Maybe once he saw the complexity of what we'd built, he'd appreciate the wisdom behind it. I was wrong. I remember the meeting that broke my faith in him. It was about 3 months into his reign, and I was trying to explain the volatility of our Asia-Pacific sublicensing agreements. These weren't just contracts. They were relationships built over years of careful negotiation, cultural understanding, and technical expertise. One wrong move could unravel deals worth tens of millions. "Roy," Jordan interrupted, actually spinning a fidget spinner on the mahogany conference table. A literal fidget spinner. "In 2024, you're getting bogged down in the how. I need you to focus on the wow. We need to be agile. You need to break things and move fast." I felt my jaw clench. I'd heard this Silicon Valley nonsense before from consultants who charged us thousands of dollars to tell us what we already knew. "Jordan," I said, keeping my voice level, "if we break the sublicensing terms in Singapore, we trigger a default clause in the German master agreement. We lose the European market overnight." He rolled his eyes. Actually rolled them like a teenager asked to take out the trash. "That's just legal mumbo-jumbo, Roy. We have lawyers for that. I need visionaries, not mechanics." The room went quiet. The other executives, men I'd worked with for over a decade, men whose careers I'd helped build, men whose mistakes I'd covered for countless times, stared at their notebooks. No one said a word. No one defended the guy who'd helped design the foundation they were all standing on. That moment, that silence, told me everything I needed to know. They were going to let this privileged kid dismiss me as outdated, irrelevant, a relic. Men who owed their positions to the systems I'd built were going to sit there and watch him tear me down because he was the boss's son and I was just the hired help. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not into anger. Anger is hot and stupid and makes you do things you regret. This was cold calculation. I didn't say anything dramatic. I just closed my binder. The sound of the metal ring snapping shut echoed in that silent room like a gunshot. "Understood," I said. My voice was calm, professional. "I'll stop being a mechanic." Jordan smirked, thinking he'd won some kind of power struggle. He thought he was house-training the old guard, showing everyone who was really in charge. He had no idea he'd just walked into the reactor core and turned off the cooling system. See, Jordan made the classic mistake of the inherited rich. He confused authority with power. He had the title. He had the corner office. He had the signature authority on contracts. But he didn't know where the bodies were buried. Hell, he didn't even know there was a graveyard. After that meeting, I went back to my office. A small, windowless box compared to the glass fishbowls the new VP hires got. And I started to organize. But I wasn't organizing for efficiency anymore. I was organizing for war. I pulled up the original founding documents, the ones with coffee stains and handwritten notes in the margins. The ones written on software that doesn't exist anymore, saved on backup drives that most people had forgotten existed. I sat there surrounded by the hum of the servers I'd personally selected and budgeted for, and I started to plan. I knew what was coming. Rich kids like Jordan are predictable. They're like bad code. They always crash the same way. He needed to cut costs to fund his visionary new projects, which mostly involved blockchain because of course they did. And the easiest cost to cut was the quiet department that never made a fuss, never pushed back, never demanded recognition. The department of one that had been keeping the whole operation legal for over 2 decades. I could feel it coming. The air conditioning in the building started to smell different, like cheap cologne mixed with betrayal and PowerPoint presentations. Jordan was going to fire me, and he was going to do it in the most corporate, cowardly way possible. But here's the thing about architects, we keep the blueprints. And sometimes, if we're smart, we draw trapdoors that only we can see. I looked at the framed photo of Patterson on my desk. He looked tired in the picture, clutching one of his ever-present cigars, but his eyes were sharp. "Sorry, old man," I whispered to the photo. "Your boy is about to learn why you never fire the person who holds the keys to the castle." I saved 3 specific files to an encrypted USB drive. The original 2001 employment contract with the royalty clause. The 2008 master licensing agreement with clause 14B. And the 2018 global expansion amendment that had somehow been signed digitally instead of with wet ink. I put the drive in my briefcase next to my coffee thermos. Then I waited for the phone to ring. It didn't take long. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Tuesday is the coward's day for firing people. Monday is too aggressive. Friday risks a weekend PR disaster. Tuesday is bland. Tuesday is safe. Tuesday lets executives tell themselves they're being professional. "Roy, could you pop down to the strategy room? Just a quick sync." It was the HR director, a woman named Lisa Miller, who looked like she was 12 years old and got her management training from YouTube videos. Her voice had that tremor in it. The "I'm about to ruin your life, but I'm going to use corporate therapy speak while I do it" tremor. "On my way," I said. I picked up my coffee mug, took a sip of what was probably my last cup of company coffee, and left it on my desk. I grabbed nothing else. No notebook, no pen, just me in my khakis and polo shirt. The uniform of the middle-aged engineer who'd never quite learned to play corporate dress-up games. I walked down that hallway for what I knew would be the last time. Past the server room I'd designed the specifications for. Past the wall of patents, 7 of which had my name in small print as a technical contributor. Past the break room where the new marketing interns were making TikToks about grinding and hustle culture. They looked at me like I was already a ghost. The strategy room was a glass box in the center of the floor, designed for transparency. The blinds were drawn. So much for transparency. Lisa was sitting at the head of the table, clutching a manila folder like a shield. Jordan was leaning against the window, looking out at the parking lot. He didn't even turn around when I walked in. He was checking his watch, a Rolex Daytona that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. "Have a seat, Roy," Lisa said. She didn't offer me water. That's always the first sign. If they offer water, they feel guilty about what they're doing. If they don't, they just want you gone. I sat down and folded my hands on the table. Might as well cut through the corporate theater. "Am I being fired, Lisa?" Lisa blinked like I'd slapped her. She wasn't ready for the direct approach. She wanted to do the dance, the careful corporate choreography designed to minimize legal liability. "We're going through a strategic realignment, Roy. Jordan and the board have been reviewing our operational efficiency, and we've identified some areas where we can streamline our processes." "Restructuring," I said flatly. "Just say the word. It has fewer syllables." Jordan finally turned around wearing that smirk that said he thought he was the smartest person in the room because his dad had owned the building. Look, Roy, let's not make this into some kind of drama. The industry is shifting toward AI and automation. We need cloud-native thinkers, people who can move at digital speed. You've done adequate work here, but we're pivoting to a lean, agile model. We need speed, and frankly, your department has become a bottleneck. A bottleneck? I repeated. You mean legal compliance? I mean dead weight, Jordan said, dropping the corporate speak for a second. You review contracts like we're buying real estate in 1990. It's slow, it's boring, and it's expensive. We're automating the whole licensing framework. AI can do what you do in seconds instead of weeks. I almost laughed. I physically had to bite the inside of my cheek to stop myself from cackling. AI doing my job. Sure. Good luck getting ChatGPT to understand the nuance of a cross-border indemnity clause regarding third-party intellectual property in a non-extradition treaty zone. Good luck getting a machine to read between the lines when a German manufacturer is trying to slip in language that would void our exclusivity protections. So I'm redundant, I said. Your role has been eliminated, Lisa corrected quickly, sliding a thick packet across the table like it was radioactive. Effective immediately. We've prepared a severance package. 2 weeks of pay for every year of service capped at 6 months. We're also offering outplacement services to help you update your resume and transition to new opportunities. I looked at the packet. 6 months of pay for 23 years of building their empire, 24 weeks of salary for over 2 decades of keeping them out of court, out of bankruptcy, and out of federal prison. It was an insult wrapped in legal paper and tied with a corporate bow. But I didn't reach for it. Not yet. And my equity? I asked. My vesting schedule? Jordan waved a hand dismissively like he was shooing away a fly. Standard terms apply. Anything unvested is forfeited upon termination. You know the drill. You wrote half the employee policy manual, didn't you? He thought that was clever. He thought he was using my own work against me, throwing my contribution to the company back in my face. What he didn't realize was that I'd written different rules for different people. I did write the policy, I agreed. I wrote the policy for employees, but I didn't write the policy for founding technical partners. Jordan frowned. What's that supposed to mean? I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Nothing important, I said, standing up. I'll sign the separation agreement, but I need one thing first. We can't give you access to your computer, Lisa said, panic creeping into her voice. Security protocol. I don't need the computer. I need a hard copy of my original employment contract, the one your father signed in 2001, and a printout of my current personnel record showing my termination date and cause. Why? Jordan asked, his eyes narrowing. For my unemployment filing, I lied smoothly. The state requires proof of the original hire date for long-term benefits calculations. It was complete bureaucratic nonsense, but people like Jordan and Lisa are terrified of bureaucracy. They don't understand it, so they obey it. Fine, Jordan sighed. Lisa, print it. Let's get this over with. I have a lunch meeting. Lisa scurried out. Jordan and I were left alone. The air was thick with everything neither of us was saying. You think I'm making a mistake? Jordan said, trying to sound challenging but mostly sounding defensive. I think you're doing exactly what I expected you to do, I said calmly. You're pruning the tree because you think the leaves look messy, without realizing the roots are the only thing holding it up. We'll be fine, he scoffed. The revenue streams are automated. The systems run themselves. Do they? I asked softly. Lisa returned with my documents. I placed them carefully in my folder without signing their separation agreement. You need to sign the waiver, Lisa said, pushing a pen toward me. I'll take it home to review, I said. Standard procedure. You gave me 48 hours in the document itself. Clause 12. I wrote it, remember? Jordan shrugged. Whatever. She's got no leverage. What's she going to do? Sue us for wrongful termination? I walked out without another word. Straight to the elevator, down to the lobby, out into the Ohio sunshine. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding. Not from fear, from anticipation. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my living room when the news broke. StreamTech had just announced a $200 million licensing deal with Euro Manufacturing Solutions, a German industrial conglomerate. The press release featured a photo of Jordan shaking hands with executives in Munich, talking about borderless innovation and the future of industrial data. I opened my laptop and sent a single email. Not to StreamTech, to Euro Manufacturing's general counsel. A simple, polite inquiry about whether their due diligence had confirmed that the 2018 amendment underlying their licensing agreement met the wet ink signature requirements specified in Clause 14b of StreamTech's master agreement. German lawyers don't like surprises. 3 hours later, my phone started ringing. The next morning, I walked into StreamTech's boardroom wearing my best suit. Jordan was there, along with Lisa, 2 external lawyers who probably charged more per hour than I used to make in a week, and a very nervous-looking general counsel named Ryan Foster. "Roy," Jordan said, trying to sound casual while sweat beaded on his forehead. "Thanks for coming in. There seems to be some confusion about the Euro manufacturing contract." I sat down and placed 3 folders on the table. No confusion on my end, just a simple legal problem with a simple legal solution. "What kind of problem?" Ryan asked. I opened the first folder. "In 2008, your father was paranoid about hostile takeovers. He insisted on Clause 14b in the Master Licensing Agreement. Any amendment affecting core IP rights must be signed with wet ink by both the founding executive and the chief technology architect." I slid the document across the table. "That's me." Jordan grabbed the paper. "So? You can just sign it now." "I could have," I said, "when I was an employee. But I'm not an employee anymore. I was terminated without cause 2 weeks ago." Which brings us to this. I opened the second folder and pulled out my original employment contract. "What's that?" Lisa asked. "My 2001 employment agreement, Article 7, subsection 3. In the event of involuntary termination without cause, I retain a 1.8% royalty interest in all international licensing revenue, retroactive to date of implementation." Ryan Foster went pale. He was doing math in his head. 1.8% of 6 years of international revenue, 1.8% of all future international deals. "The 2018 amendment was signed digitally," I continued, "not wet ink, which means it's void ab initio, invalid from the beginning. Every international deal you've made for 6 years was based on rights you didn't actually have. And now that I'm no longer an employee, I'm under no obligation to retroactively validate those agreements. Unless," I added, opening the third folder, "we can reach an understanding." Jordan's face had gone from red to purple to gray. "How much?" $8.5 million, I said, "plus validation of all existing contracts to keep you out of federal prison, plus a formal apology acknowledging my contributions to this company." "That's extortion," Jordan whispered. "No," I said calmly. "That's the price of not reading the fine print before you fire the person who wrote it." The negotiation took 6 hours. In the end, they paid. They had to. The alternative was losing the German deal, facing SEC fraud investigations, and explaining to shareholders why their international revenue stream was built on legally worthless paper. I walked out of that building with an $8.5 million settlement check, a 1.8% royalty stake in all future international licensing deals, and a handwritten letter from Jordan Walsh acknowledging that my termination had been a regrettable error in judgment and thanking me for my invaluable contributions to StreamTech's success. I had that letter framed. It hangs in my home office next to a photo of Patterson and me from the early days, both of us grinning like we'd just pulled off the heist of the century. 3 months later, I bought a house in Florida with a view of the Gulf. I wake up when I want, read the financial news over coffee, and watch my royalty checks arrive every quarter like clockwork. Jordan's still CEO, but word is the board isn't happy about the unexpected legal costs that appeared on last quarter's earnings report. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting paid. The kid learned what his father knew all along: you don't fire the architect while you're still living in the building he designed, especially when he's smart enough to keep a copy of the blueprints. Patterson would have been proud.